What's going on, everybody? Little Night's Live theme there from our esteemed colleague, Benacero, who of course comes from lovely New York City and does some of the custom music for the nights. I love this one. How is everybody? Hopefully everyone is doing very, 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 very well. A lot of varies. Iomade apparently is how you actually pronounce that. So, you know, we all learn something every day, and that is what I learned from that live stream. So, yeah, we're just getting started here, Frank. Hey, I see London. I see Vin in the chat. I see Ben. I see William. I see London. Matt stopped in for a little bit. Total Entropy, welcome back. Damien, of course. Galarian in Depth is excited that I said it right. Iomade. I guess it kind of sounds a little Latin. GM Scott, Inkyard, Kevin Curio, let's go. Let's go indeed, Kevin. Yeah, so, you know, Thursdays are a chance to kind of sit back and talk to one another and really enjoy our time together. It's been a pretty crazy week. Zandy Games, howdy. Hopefully I don't get copyright struck for that. In case you missed it, we went with live with our first Rise of the Runelords AP on Tuesday. It was crazy. Julio, hey, or Julio, hola. London, yeah, it was a completely, totally crazy, unexpected, well, one could argue that it was a clusterfuck.
Iomade tipped $10. You coup de grace my friend Phoebe.
Well, someone's excited that we said it right. Iomade. I like that one. Yeah. Listen, you know, let's be real with each other. Let's talk as friends do about what happened Tuesday. If you're a patron, you know that usually after a stream, I hop on the Discord. I kind of chat about what happened. We talk about the game. We talk about what got conversated about. And I didn't. I had a quiet night off after the stream, and then I kind of was absent from the Discord pretty much all day Wednesday. Quite frankly, it was overwhelming. You know, it's a very weird thing to play your favorite game with your friends and have an incredible time, and to have so many people say, you know, wow, we love you guys. We appreciate what you're doing. Here's a buttload of money. And you know, I think that I wasn't ready. I wasn't prepared for that level of support. And obviously, I understand it was our first stream. Everybody wanted to come out and be really supportive. But I never, in my wildest dreams, expected that. Oh, Julio, Portuguese. So, you know, I've actually been to Brazil. I've been to the big falls there. La Garganta del Diablo. So yeah, it's been a crazy couple days. You know, just a couple months ago, you know, and for the entire channel's history, we were losing money every month. I rented a studio in order to try to make this channel be a little bit more professional, put a little bit of polish and edge on it. You know, we're not the trained Hollywood pros, and we don't have, you know, corporate billionaire backers or anything like that. So, you know, we tried to do something to bring something fun. And we invested a lot of time and a lot of money. And thanks to the Patreon, we were able to basically build up a solid enough base that we were no longer in a essentially in the hole, making some money. But it still wasn't clear, like, where do we go from here? We want to continue to develop and grow the Patreon. And yeah, and then people showed up, and to be fair, most of the people donating were patrons. So these are folks who are already paying us money, and they said, "Hey, here's some more money." And okay, it got a little out of control. I mean, I think I have 8 villain points, and what's worse is, of course, we're gonna make those stronger for the next time. Because a simple reroll just isn't enough. You guys gave so much damn money to those frickin' knights that I'm gonna have to basically be like all these other GMs and cheat just to make it make it fair. But of course, I don't cheat, but you guys can cheat for me, and so that's the loophole that I'm going to use to sleep at night. And I it was very appreciated. I didn't know what to say. It felt weird to be in that space, even with people who support me so much, to be like, hey, yeah, we just gave you close to $1,000 to play role-playing games. And again, I understand it's the first stream, but I thought it was a lot of fun. And let me take another step back from that. It's been crazy. It's been the holidays. Holidays have always been bad, long before there was ever a YouTube channel. Even before people had kids and husbands and wives. Holidays were always just a horrible time to get the group together for gaming. So it's been horrible. And then people got sick, and then regular sick, not COVID sick, and then my gaming night, schedule was up in the air. And I was like, man, I haven't sat down. I haven't played Pathfinder 2 as a GM for like almost going on 2 months, because my one game kind of got derailed, and then the holidays happened, and then we were doing all these live streams, and I hadn't gotten together with the Knights. And so to be able to sit down with, Nick, Bob, Tim, and Matt, and just get right back into it, and laughing and rolling dice and just seeing everybody else go crazy. I apologize if I didn't see or read everything that you guys were chatting. When I'm in the GM mode, my focus is on the players. My focus is on the events. I'm trying to, respond in a way that's going to be dramatic and exciting for the players. And I hope that translates. I feel like it translates well for you all at home as well. And of course, I'm not the most proficient person in Foundry. I love to play in person. That's why I was paying almost $1,000 a month to have a live stream studio, just so we could do that. But it just makes more sense right now, I think, to play online. And we're going to continue to do that for the foreseeable future. Although I do think, and I've said this before to the patrons, when we do go back to the studio, we are also going to be doing that live as well. We've accumulated some aide de camps in the form of the sort of the Knights, unofficial Knights of the Last Call. Folks like Aaron Williams Brandis, our buddy George, a longtime friend of ours who's played with us. They've really stepped up to try to help us with some of that off-camera activity during the Rise of the Runelord games. And so we're going to be able to go live in person, and I think that's going to be like the nextest level. So yeah, it was crazy. It was awesome. And so, here we go. Also very, very excited that so many people decided to join the Patreon after that, and so that's new people who said, hey, maybe I've watched you, I haven't seen you, and I'm going to join your group because you all seem like you're the kind of community that I want to be a part of. And I savagely protect that community. I'm like a mama bear in that regard. I will happily lose out on hundreds of dollars a month of income if it means keeping that community healthy and thriving and vibrant. And that's like my number one goal at this point. I mean, having fun on YouTube and making videos and live streaming. But honestly, Knights of Last Call at this point is really about the community that we're building. I like one of my main goals is to figure out how to do a night con, and try to get some folks together to play games. If you're watching, you're not a patron. I've got a contest going that at the end of the year, I'm going to pull some. So I'll hold a raffle for people who've been a patron. With an entries related to how long you've been a patron, how much your tier is. I'm going to build someone a handcrafted wooden game vault table. Sort of the wormwood, but completely custom to your exact dimensions, whatever wood you want. Then me and some of the knights are going to hand deliver it. We're going to drive across the country, hand deliver it, assemble it, put it up for you. And if you want to, we'll even do some gaming. I'm going to lose a lot of money on that, right? Like I don't make money on that. I just told you how much the Patreon makes. Why am I doing that? Because it sounds awesome. Because these people have become my friends, and I want to make them as excited about RPGs as I am. And I built Bob a custom gaming table, and he loves it. It's an heirloom piece that I'm sure his kids are gonna fight over after he's dead. And I'd love to be able to do the same for somebody else. So yeah, it was a very fun night. And then again, you're in the GM mode, right? You've got the blinders on. You're focused on the game. You're thinking about players and monsters and stuff, and then suddenly it's over and you're like, oh man, did that I wasn't paying attention to everything that was coming through. I've gone back and when rewatched it, but I was just overwhelmed. I knew that I was in trouble because of how many hero points the people had. So Steven
tipped $5. Nightcon Owen HTS.
HTS, huh? Well, ask and ye shall receive. Horizon Thunder Sphere. It's a very good spell. It even got cast. Tim did a 3-action, or Gwildor did a 3-action Horizon Thunder Sphere, and it was a good spell. Let's get. Oh, Jesus Christ! I know this is supposed to be Arcane. Gandalf Derek would be disappointed. But and I don't want to just talk about the live stream, but I almost want to do a show after the show, like a day or two after, just to talk about it. Like I want to sit down and dissect that game, right? I'd love to almost like watch back that game and be able to tell you. Number one, like just tactical errors, like nitty gritty mechanic, like watching tape after an NFL game. But also like things that I noticed, like, oh, okay, as a GM, I should be doing that there. I should have picked up on that more. I should have pushed a little bit more in that regard. So almost like rewatching myself and sort of critiquing myself and critiquing the group. Again, if we watched, I think we can all agree that like Nick deciding to provoke 3 attacks of opportunity from trolls was probably like one of the worst moves that we've ever seen. And he learned from that mistake, and then he died. And then there was a hit he was at 12 hit points, no stamina. He got hit. He had a bunch of hero points. Should have used a hero point right there to reduce that hit to a miss, or sorry, reduce that troll's hit to a miss, and then he wouldn't have even gone down at all. So, and had to pay such a big price in hero points just to come back. But I don't want to nitpick too much, but we're nitpickers, right?
Finn tipped $8.03. Congrats on the live app. What are some of the top ideas for villain point buffs? We'll catch the rest of this after my flights.
Oh, okay. So yeah, Vin, thank you, Vin, very much for the tip. Good luck. Have a safe flight home to Australia. We'll see you hopefully in maybe 12 to 24. Yeah. So we didn't understand exactly how we want to do that. With the GM getting villain points, we knew that there's a lot of GMs out there, and the players are going to have their fun. They're going to have their ammunition, and it's a big ammunition, right? It has been the whole AP, but what can I use? Well, one of the things that I really want to do is to keep the spirit of Pathfinder 2nd Edition. Now that being said, I have played a ton of games that have a form of GM currency, right? Where the GM is essentially, mechanically, in the game, allowed to fudge or cheat. They are allowed to increase the danger level of an encounter. They are allowed to make things that the players wish were not true, true. Sort of revealing an unwelcome truth is how Dungeon World would call it. Or they can re-roll, or they can save an NPC from an untimely death. And typically in those narrative currency games, the GM is very open about this, and then goes forward and says, hey, because I cheated in that respect, I'm going to award you, the hero, or the heroes, some form of hero point or action point or fate point as a sort of tit for tat, a sort of quid pro quo, where I do something for you, you do something for me, and now I've kind of made something harder for you, but I've also given you ammunition to use right back at me. Now, that premise could work in Pathfinder 2nd Edition, but instead of me doing all these nasty and nefarious things and then giving the heroes ammunition just to be able to beat it, instead I'm not, and I will let the chat's donations empower me to sort of take certain creative liberties with the game. Basically it'll be like me using those sort of mutants and masterminds or fate or Benny systems from like Savage Worlds. But instead of giving the players a point, I won't. I'll spend a point that the chat will have to give to me. So, it'll be a way we can structure and format it. So in terms of what does that mean? Well, I knew that fight. I knew that fight had the possibility. There's a series of stone stairs that go down into the dam. I knew there was a possibility that some of the trolls below might make a perception check and hear the battle. Pathfinder 1 had all these great rules about -1 perception DC per 10 feet of distance, so you could kind of almost really figure it out almost mathematically. Pathfinder 2 is a little bit more wishy-washy, and so instead of making those rolls, I just said, well, all right, we have the villain point for a reroll. I'll spend 1, and we'll just say that the trolls that could have joined the fight, they will join the fight, that they made that. But those trolls were there, and in a sense, I was borrowing them from a future encounter, right? I think what we could say instead with these villain points is like, no, like there weren't trolls, and now there are trolls. And I know a lot of GMs do this anyways to sort of build the tension and the entertainment value. That's not something that I typically do unless I'm playing one of these game systems where I have been given this permission from the mechanics of the game to do such things. Well, Pathfinder 2 doesn't have that. But what we're doing isn't exactly Pathfinder 2. Instead, I'm going to allow the chat to sort of give me that ammunition. And we could do things like make creatures have, be elite or have better powers. Maybe have them have almost like a second wind if there's a really cool monster that kind of got its ass beat and the chat has put in their hard-earned donations because they want to see something awesome. They want to see a good fight. They want to see, that cocky son of a bitch Gwildor and Burl get their, asses handed to them, then I'll do that. And I'll say, okay, just when you think he's out, they pull him back in and, he stands up and he regains half his hit points and he's going to, be a trouble for you all. I know we've talked at length. We don't want us to turn into like a nuclear arms race, right? Like I still want this to be fun and balanced. And I'm going to really focus more on, creating opportunities for interesting and engaging gameplay, as well as unique narrative moments that I think will be fun, entertaining for the group at home, all of you watching, as well as for the players to watch too. Because again, they're here to play fun and have fun and play Pathfinder 2nd Edition. So I want to make sure that they are having fun too. Because if I'm making sure that the players are having fun, then I can assure that probably you all at home are having fun. And it reminds me of one of the the 2 rules to playing a role-playing game is like, number 1, make sure everybody else is having fun. Then number 2, make sure you're having fun. So put others first, make sure that they are having a good time, but don't neglect your own sensibilities. All right. Well, lots of chat here. So for starters, thanks for everybody for doing anything. I really just wanted to get on here today. I know it was a little bit later. I don't know if we're going to always do 8 p.m. I forgot Critical Role's back this week. So if you need to bust out, I think they start at 10. So Ostensibly, this is from 8 to 10. I'm scrolling here through the chat. So lots of love coming my way. Lots of love coming for the. You want to see me twirling my villain stash and cackling? Oh, we'll cackle. I mean, I could do some fun and dastardly stuff. You let me off the chain, you know. Galarian says, focusing on the game and the players. That's crazy. Yeah, I mean that's the name of the game, right? But it's like, you know, again, I've said this before, but like the fun for me as a GM isn't to just, you know, because I could maybe make the game more fun, right, by fudging all the time, even if the cameras weren't rolling, like in my home game. But for me, it's more fun when I have to work within a limited palette, right? Like, and the limited palette are the tools the game system has given me in order to create this experience. I don't have every color in the rainbow. I have a bunch of reds and a bunch of yellows and a bunch of browns. So if I want to do a very cool winter scene, it's going to be very difficult to paint that picture. So instead of trying to fight that, right, instead of fighting that, it's like, well, no, lean into it. This game gives you a lot of tools to do A, B, and C. Lean into that, and the system will support you and reward you for that. So that's kind of always my thought process. If I want to play a game where I'm fudging and cheating all the time, I'll play a game where fudging and cheating are part of the game. What makes our whole experience here for fun is Pathfinder 2 is not designed that way, and we are going to sort of make it that way, thanks to, you know, everyone's participation at home. I think I saw someone say that the Kona Cold was probably the MVP. Oh, there it is. Yeah. Yeah, Phoenix said it. Yeah, that Kona Cold was very. We might need to get like a Cone of Cold. You know, that was a very powerful bit of magic there. That was really good. Also, just really impressed with it does 12d6, which is nice. It outscales like a fireball, which is really good. Yeah, Kent, that's a really good point. You know, people need to learn mistakes. I think sometimes, though, you know, TTRPGs can be very brutal about it. You know, there's no save points, and there's no respawning at the graveyard and going for a corpse run and getting your spirit back. It can be very difficult, you know, to learn that way. And we're doing a podcast this weekend, which will be interesting. We're doing episode 4, but we're also going to do a product review for the Battlezoo Bestiary. You know, we've been looking through some of the monsters. I just started cracking open to it today, although Bob and Smith have been going at it. I think they've been getting to the book all week. But I've seen a few things, and there's a couple of interesting things that come up in that, and I'd like to talk about it in the review video. So I'm going to save that for that. But definitely something to be said there about that. Actually, you know, Kent, I wanted to say this here. Let me tell you about losing a familiar. Let me tell you a story. Let me tell everybody a story. So we were playing 3rd edition. It might have been 3.5 edition, actually. But in 3rd edition, a wizard could, you know, make magical items by taking feats. They could take craft. They started the game with craft scroll, but you could take craft arms and armor to make magical weapons and magical armor. You could take craft wand to be able to make magical wands, craft staves, and you could take craft wondrous item to be able to make wondrous items. So, you know, bracers that increase your strength, cloaks that increase your saving throws, the whole rigmarole. And did I lose audio? Hello? Sorry? I don't know. Is anybody else hearing me? Is anybody seeing me? I just get nervous when I see somebody say that they're having audio issues. Okay. Okay. Sorry, Total. I think it might just be you. All right. Okay, so 3.5. Isn't that Pathfinder 0.993? Yeah, I mean, Pathfinder 1 is basically a rematch of 3rd edition, and they basically took 3.5. So yeah, it's pretty close. So anyways, but the difference is that in Pathfinder, they did change some things in Pathfinder 1, and this is actually a really important thing that is important that they changed, which is that in Pathfinder 1, well, I should say in 3.5 and 3rd edition, whenever you made a magical item using one of these feats, you only had to pay half as much gold, but you also had to pay 1/25 of the so what is it, 4% of the gold price in XP. You actually lost experience points from doing this, and you could not lose a level from doing this. In fact, at that point, you would run out. You could no longer make magical items until you went out and adventured and earned more experience points. Well, I loved making magical items, and my wizard, Asinius, the Band of the Burning Hand was the name of our adventuring party, and I was in it, and I loved like making everybody custom magical items. We all had matching red cloaks of protection with a flame motif, and they all, I used arcane marks and it was an invisible arcane mark so that I could find everybody's, magical items, and I customized every magical item, and I had just spent a ton of experience points, and we had finally gotten up into like the double-digit levels. I was really excited because I finally got to level 11, which gave me 6th level magic, and I was looking forward to a lot of the 6th level spells, and so I was really excited. But part of the course, as soon as we got there, I spent a ton of experience points making magical items to the point where I was only like 2 or 3 experience points over the threshold that you needed to be 11th level. Everybody else was, safely maybe several hundred points or maybe even 1,000 points into 11th level on their way to 12. But I spent it, and I was just a little bit above 11th level. Well, we go into a dungeon where our very unfair DM, Mr. Aaron Smith, a.k.a. William Brandis himself, Matt Holloway asked, when was this? It was... I think it was before you started playing with us, Matt. So it was when I lived in my apartment. But anyways, okay, so there we go. We go into this dungeon. In fact, the dungeon, this is a whole story. The dungeon was actually, we had found it, but we didn't find the entrance to the dungeon. We didn't know where that was. And so I actually used a teleport spell to get us into the dungeon. It was located a mile or something crazy below the earth. It was this locked and sealed vault. Okay. So we're going through the dungeon, and as we go through the dungeon, we're fighting all sorts of weird and crazy creatures, and it doesn't make any sense, but it was almost like part of the fun of this dungeon. It was like this ancient dungeon where it was almost like a time vault. And we come across this pair of stone doors, and they say, beware, beyond lies that which is broken. And we were like, oh, wow, what could that mean? Is it some sort of torture demon that broke on the rack? Or what does that possibly mean? Well, he was being literal. What it meant was that the creature beyond it was just broken. It was busted. We opened the door, and there's a banshee. Now, at the time, 3rd edition didn't have a banshee stat. And so Mr. William Brandis basically just gave it the ability to cast Wail of the Banshee 3 times a day. And this creature shrieks out with a Wail of Banshee on the first round of combat. And I passed. The save isn't that high, the DC. But my familiar, my Raven, does die. So he kind of goes, explodes. And in 3rd edition D&D, when your familiar died, you lost several hundred experience points. And so I went in the middle of that fight in round 1 from level 11 down, because I was just at the cusp. I lost several hundred experience points, and then I went down to 10. But I was only a few hundred experience points away from 11. So I was 95% of the way through level 10. But I was level 10. I was like, oh crap, what's going on? And then it did that. We were like, okay, we're going to regroup and we're going to do this. Well, we didn't know that it could do this 3 times per day. So then the next round it did it again. And this time I failed my save. And I died. Well, in that edition of the game, if you get raised or resurrected, you lose a level, you go down a level, and you go all the way down to halfway to the prior level. So before I was 98%, I was 4% above level 11, and then my familiar died, so then I was at 98% of level 10. Well, then I lost all of that experience at level 10, became level 9, and then dropped down to 50% of level 9. So in 2 rounds, my character lost 2 levels. I lost an entire level of spells, level 6 spells, magic, which I had been trying to find and get forever. And worse, once the smoke cleared, they realized they couldn't even get out of the dungeon because I was dead. and they had no way to teleport out. Now, here's what's funny. So Anthony, being very, I respect that statement. That sounds fun. Flat face. It was hilarious. We were all one of my favorite gaming moments of all time. In fact, London said it best. But now I can craft again. Exactly. Now, Anthony, the reason why that was so awesome and amazing was because it happened. It happened. Like, how many people play D&D every day? How many people play D&D every year? How many hundreds of campaigns have I played that has happened in, and that it will ever happen? That happened once. That's my moment. That's my group's moment. That's ours. And it wasn't artificially created. It wasn't scripted. It wasn't crafted. That was uniquely our moment. And we can look at that as almost as if it was a real thing that happened to us. And I actually cherish that moment. Sometimes just getting defeated can be hilarious and fun. It's a story that you'll tell your grandkids. I mean, again, I was the best man for William Brandis at his wedding, and I even said in my best man speech for him, basically talking about how, like, getting married's cool, but what about D&D? Like that's where it's really at. And it might sound stupid, but that's why I play Dungeons and Dragons. That's why I play role-playing games. That's why I play Pathfinder. I don't play Pathfinder to, like, show up and be like, cool, it's another mechanical fight and we beat everything and nothing interesting happened and the exact right thing happened and now we gain levels and now I beat the game. It's not a video game. I'm not trying to, like, get through it. I'm there to experience things that no one else has ever experienced. And, well, that was one of them, that no one else is going to experience that moment except for us. So I thought it was really awesome. But but then in Pathfinder 1, they got rid of the fact that you lost experience. I think, well, number one, you didn't lose experience when you craft magical items, but they still cost half as much if you had crafting feats. So, surprise, crafting became busted in Pathfinder 1. That was no big surprise to, I think, anyone. And then I also don't think you lost experience when when your familiar died. Oh, Amber Phoenix, I de-leveled so many times in EverQuest 1, I couldn't even begin to tell you. I would die, and then in trying to go get my corpse, I would get killed again and de-level, or lose more experience and lose more experience. Yeah. But sometimes things have to be, you need the dark to see the light, you need that, you need the good to see the bad, the bad and the good, see the good to see the bad, the yin yang, the whole premise there. I think there's a lot to be said about that. All right. Well, let's get started with some spells, shall we? What do you guys think about that? All right. Well, here we go. So we were taking a look at the level 2 arcane spells, and this is what we have right now. We were looking at a good number of A spells. Of course, we were getting a fair number of F spells as well. That's to be expected. But so far, it seemed like we were really doing pretty well. We had gotten a lot of A spells and even an S spell. And we're not even halfway through. So we should be good. All right. What is going on there with that? 1 second. 1 sec. Okay. My window was open, and it is snowing so much that it was starting to snow inside my house. Because this storm is crazy. All right, so the let's get into this. So Gentle Repose is a level 2 spell. It targets 1 corpse and lasts until the corpse until the next daily preparation. And this is basically, I mean, hopefully you don't need this spell. People are only needing it if they're dead. So, you know, not really going to come up a whole lot. And it's definitely a scroll spell. I think we can all agree on that. Let me get it up here. And, yeah, so it's a scroll spell, and not a very particularly good one at that. I mean, hopefully, it's not an F. It does work, and it lasts all day, and, you know, it does what it needs to do, but, you know, not really something that we probably need all the time. So I'm going to put it as a D scroll. Again, not something that you're going to need on the regular, and you know, I think you could probably safely not have it, and I don't think it's going to be too much of an issue where you die and then somehow also need extra time to get your body raised. And even if they do, you could probably just wait till the next day, memorize the spell, or your cleric or druid could take it, and then you could just cast it. So yeah, I think we're good there. All right. Now, we're on to a former MVP in Pathfinder 1, Glitter Dust. As a reminder, in Pathfinder 1, Glitter Dust was a area burst that automatically made any creature that was invisible visible. And it also gave all creatures a -40 check to their stealth. That just happened. Like, there was no way to escape that. I believe, ironically, though, it was a will save in Pathfinder 1 because it could blind you. And if you failed the will save, your character was blinded, and for a good amount of time. So this was an AoE will save blinding that also served double duty at eliminating people that were invisible and basically making it impossible for people to hide. So let's see how far the apple has fallen from the tree. All right, well, we start off good with a 10-foot burst, 120-foot reflex. 120-foot range with a 10-foot burst and a reflex save. That makes kind of sense. I mean, I think we can all agree that a reflex save probably makes more sense than a will save. I'm not really quite sure. And the creatures are outlined in glittering dust. Each creature must attempt a reflex save. If a creature has its invisibility negated by this spell, it is just concealed instead of invisible. And this is something that we've seen a lot in Pathfinder 2, where certain things that counter invisibility just don't hard counter it right out. Instead, it kind of it just makes it go from full invisibility to just concealment. So that's pretty cool. But I think it should note that that invisibility only gets negated for just 2 rounds, and that's if they pass a save. And even if they fail the save, it's only negated for 1 minute. So that means that unlike the original Glitter Dust, which you just automatically were not invisible, here, if someone passes a save, they may not, well, to be fair, it's negated for 2 rounds, which is probably all you really need in Pathfinder 2, if we're being completely honest here. And it's not, and here, but okay, this is why it takes us so long to get through things. Language, okay? Language is the same. It says, now here's the thing, right? Look at all this text, okay? Look at all this text here, okay? You're playing a game, and you have a monster, and it has glitter dust. Or maybe you're a PC, and you have glitter dust on your sheet, or you have it on your spontaneous, and the fight's going, and, you're not a professional YouTube, even then we're going to fuck it up anyways. But you're not a professional YouTuber. You're not some crazy person who just memorizes all the spells like, super nerds like us, right? You're just like, oh, okay. I have a glitter dust scroll, or, oh, I've got glitter dust. Or you're the DM, and, you flip through and you go, oh, glitter dust. And you read this spell and you're like, okay, what happens? And you're like, okay, failure. Okay, the creature is dazzled for 1 minute and its invisibility is negated for 1 minute. And everybody goes, oh, sweet. So then what would you do in that situation? Okay, what would you do in that situation? I'll tell you what you would do in that situation. The next time someone goes to attack your invisible creature, you would not call for a flat check. Because what does negated invisibility mean? It means the invisibility doesn't matter. And even mentally, you're thinking, oh yeah, the creature's literally covered in, like, basically 20 pounds of magic glitter. He's completely visible. I can see him. Oh, the spell says negated. And buried up in the top is this random thing that says, if a creature has its invisibility negated by this spell, it's concealed instead of invisible. That's very confusing, and it's not intuitive, and a lot of people will probably get that wrong because it doesn't make a lot of sense, because it tells you here that it's negated. And everybody that I know would read that and think negate means it basically just cancels it. It just cancels it. There's other words in the English language that we could use, and I just don't. Again, I'm not debating whether or not it should just completely destroy the invisibility. I think it's kind of more interesting that actually makes it, you concealed, where you have a DC 5 check to hide. But okay, but let's also talk about Pathfinder 2 and the way that the design. Somebody, and there we go. Somebody said, "Hey, oops, I played that wrong in the Chambers of Wrath." Yep. So there you go. See, like it you read that and you think, and again, I'm reading the spell. I've known it because I really like this spell, and I was prepared to give this spell an S. Flavor text should not be with the mechanics. I agree. Everything that I need to run a spell should be down here in this section. Okay. All this stuff here it's just crazy. But here's what's also really crazy about it. Again, think about this like a movie, okay? There's an invisible creature moving around the environment, okay? Can't see it at all. It's completely invisible, magically invisible, okay? Then you throw a magical glitter dust spell, and the area surrounding the invisible creature explodes in glittering particles. Now, the creature attempts to get out of the way, but fails, and so it is pelted by by glittering sparks. All right, and so you could think of it as like the Invisible Man, and you threw a bunch of glitter on him. Okay, so he's still invisible, but he's just covered in all this glitter. And mechanically, we represent that by saying, well, it's not like he's literally completely visible. So instead of him having full invisibility, we're just going to give him concealed, which means you have a DC 5 flat check against him to hit him instead of a DC 11 flat check. I think we can all agree that makes sense. Except you can hide when you are concealed, and you don't need cover. So that means that this invisible creature, which is coated in shining reflective glitter, could be right in front of you and hide. What does that even mean? And I think you would get a lot of people scratching your head. You'd have people flipping open the book. You'd have some rules lawyer weighing in saying, well, it looks like you can. But it's just like, why even open up this can of worms? Why not just say, the creature is visible? All right, anyways. It says get your non-arcane caster to do Fairy Fire instead. 5-minute duration, same range, same area, no save. And the distinctive difference between Fairy Fire and this spell, though, I'm sure, I don't remember, Fairy Fire's exact thing, is that this thing could potentially dazzle them and could even blind them on a critical failure. Okay, Kevin Curio, you said like blur. Okay, but blur very specifically says you can't hide. So I'm just saying this. They're already going in here and saying, oh, well, this negates their invisibility. But it says, but if it is negated, they are concealed instead of invisible. And then in this game, the way that this game's language is presented, you would expect it to say, and you still cannot hide due to this concealment. That is the type of thing that Pathfinder 2 would definitely put into a spell's text. But anyways, okay. Well, Zandy, to that point, I could even hide, and then once I'm hidden, I could sneak. So then you would have no idea where I am. I'm covered in glittering crystals. I'm in front of you, but I sneaked, so they didn't. And Brutus, they absolutely should have added the language from Blur, and they didn't. But it's crap like this that just like sneaks into the game system. And it's like, this is what you get for trying to make something super complicated, but then not having the time to edit everything appropriately. Okay, so this spell, even on a success, gets rid of invisibility. So this is a good invisibility hoser, and it's a level 2 spell, and probably around level 3, 4, 5 is when invisibility can start to enter the game, and it can be really, really, really problematic. So I think having a way to deal with invisibility is very powerful. There's see invisibility, but that's one target that can then see the invisible creatures. This could potentially deal with multiple invisible creatures, or make it so that that one invisible creature is more or less visible to the entire party, which is also very, very nice to have. I think this dazzle doesn't matter. I mean, dazzled is, you know, a 20% mischance. They only get enough failure. It's not nothing. But I mean, this spell used to be like one of the premier crowd control spells in the game. My rating for Glitter Dust is a B. And I'm saying I'm going B because I like that it still gets rid of the invisibility, even on success. It's a good range, it's a good area, and it's going to do what you want it to do. And if they do fail, I mean, negating their invisibility for 1 minute versus 2 rounds most of the time probably won't matter too much. There might be a couple of times where it does actually matter, so I'm not gonna say it's nothing. But dazzling them for a minute is not nothing. I mean, it's 20% mischance, and if they are dazzled, remember, if your opponent is dazzled, everybody is concealed to them. You can technically make stealth checks against them, even if you're standing out in the open. So, everybody, nobody's blind, but everybody is hiding. It's going to be really funny. Cheese of Ages says sometimes there's wording irregularities because they use a ton of writers per book. If it ever got hit with errata, this would totally get the blur text. Yes, I agree. The spell description is broken. And it goes without saying that if you critically fail, the target is blinded for 1 round and dazzled for 10 minutes, and its invisibility is negated for 10 minutes. I don't know why you would need to negate that stuff for 10 minutes. What does dazzled 10 minutes give you? I mean, I guess blinded for 1 round's okay. It's not the end of the world. Do you think this is a scroll spell? Is this worth casting against enemies who aren't invisible? It's a good question, Kevin. No, it's not. So, and it doesn't do anything. And also, by the way, I should note that the original Glitter Dust gave you a -40 to stealth checks. This negates invisibility. It does not do anything to them to prevent them from hiding. And so a creature with this could still hide from you. They could still sneak from you if they had cover or if they had regular concealment. So that is kind of wonky in that regard. And so I am actually going to move it over to a B scroll. If you're fighting against invisible creatures and you have a big party with people who want to be able to deal with that, I mean, this is definitely a scroll you're going to want to pull out. But it's a little wonky in the way it interacts, and I don't think it's good enough to be an A level spell. So, Damien, I mean, let's be a point of comparison. The Knights of Last Call are level 9, almost level 10. They have gone through almost 3 full adventures. They've only encountered 1 invisible creature the entire game, and that was a spellcaster who cast greater invisibility, improved invisibility, invisibility heightened to 4. I don't know what we're supposed to call that anymore. They really should have given, when spells have distinct changes, they should have given them pseudo names in the game, because we keep Tim and I keep referring to heightened invisibility as greater invisibility. Bob and Nick have no idea what that means. And so they're like, "Oh, okay, I have invisibility. Okay, and we're like, "No, you have invisibility 4th." It just doesn't sound as cool. I mean, this is true. Situational spells are very different. I mean, always is the case. I mean, for right, wrong, or indifferent, right? If you look at a sorcerer, I mean, they're really busted. and I think it's clearly because Paizo thought that being a prepared caster was a big advantage over being a spontaneous caster, over being one that's reliant upon a repertoire. And the biggest advantage of a prepared caster is that you can take these situational spells and never take them, and then when they are going to be A's and B's, you can take them, right? So I think that's the key advantage. But the key to being a good prepared caster, though, is you need information, and they've kind of nerfed a lot of the divination spells in this version of the game, which typically prepared casters relied on to get the information they needed to prepare. All right, our next spell is Heat Metal, which I never remember being an arcane spell. I thought this was just a druid spell, but okay. Well, we've got a lot of text, and, you know, it's one of those things, too, where it's like, okay, you're playing the game. You're like, okay, somebody cast Heat Metal. And then you're going to have to read through a frickin' novella. Cheese of Ages says, also prepared casters use staves a bit better. Do they? I don't know that they do. I kind of think that the way spontaneous casters are able to access space, I mean, essentially they can use some of their lower level spells and just add in a charge, and it's like they are basically turning their lower level spells into higher level spells. So I don't know. I don't know. I don't know if I agree with that 100%, but it's open to debate. All right, Heat Metal, 30 feet, one metal item or a metal creature, because that comes up a lot. Hey, GM Scott.
GM Scott tipped $10. Here's for Heat Metal's semi-basic save. Primary DMG is basic save. Persistent DMG isn't quite basic.
That is true. Look at this nonsense here. Geesh. Okay. So first we get this. The heated metal becomes red hot for a moment. Remember, it used to be for a while, but thank you, by the way, GM Scott. Appreciate you. And this is usually harmless to an unattended metal item, although you could rule the flammable materials catch fire or melt, which is pretty cool. But if you target a creature or item worn by a creature or a creature primarily made of metal, it does 4d6 damage. I don't even like this language at all. It's like, okay, in my mind, when I read this, I read sequentially. So I go, okay, when I cast this spell, the creature takes 4d6 damage, and then they take 2d4 points of persistent fire damage. And that's just locked in. Okay. And then it makes a reflex saving throw. And I'm like, oh, okay, because what extra thing are they going to maybe have happen to them? So in my mind, I'm rolling the dice. I'm like, okay, I roll 4d6. I'm like, okay, he takes 12 damage, and he's going to take 2d4 persistent fire damage, and then he has to make a reflex saving throw. Right? That's how we process things. We read them, and then we carry out the instructions. Then it's like, okay, let's give us this entirely extra whole segment. It's like, okay, this spell has a subsystem built into it, where if you target an item held by a creature, they can release the item to improve their degree of success by one step from the results of that saving throw. The persistent damage is associated with the objects and damages whichever creature is holding or wearing it. It has no effect if no one is holding it. So you can release the sword so that you get one save better. And then here we go at the end. If, it's basically 0, half, full, or you take double, but it's also affecting if you take no persistent damage, full persistent damage, or double persistent damage. Well, that's a lot of stuff. So in some respects, obviously if a creature is wearing metal armor, they're not going to be able to release it. But, most creatures are going to have that you're going to cast this against are going to have a weapon or a sword that's primarily made of metal. And so in my mind, so CMS says, weird that doesn't have a duration for remains hot. Remains hot forever for a minute, one round. Well, here's the thing. It says it only becomes red hot for a moment. But it does say if it has no effect if no one else, you can continue to attempt to flat checks to end the persistent damage as normal, since the item remains hot and could sear someone. So there you go. So each round, there's a 25% chance that it's no longer hot enough to continue to deal damage to somebody. It's just weird that this is tied to the persistent damage mechanic. I'm almost tempted to give this spell a penalty for it being wonky. But first things first, this spell is only going to work against people who have a primarily metal weapon or primarily metal armor, or I guess are made of metal. And so already you're somewhat limited in the number of targets. If you do target their sword, now here's the thing: it's like you got to think about this from a game mechanic standpoint, right? Again, I spent a long time trying to be a professional Magic the Gathering player. This whole second statement here about how, oh, if you cast it on their sword, it's like a disarm, okay? Like that. No, this is actually this is a downside. This is a penalty to this spell. This is making this spell worse, okay? Because what you're doing now is you're giving the creature a choice, okay? Let's say that the creature was about to die and you cast heat metal on its sword. Well, it can just go, oh, okay, I'm going to drop it and now I don't die, right? Like, or the creature could say the damage is irrelevant. I'm going to hold on to the sword. So it basically, this is actually all just a downside at all, because it doesn't actually help you at all. So because if the creature needs their weapon, then they're just going to hold on to the weapon. But if the creature doesn't need their weapon and they don't want to take the damage, then they'll just drop the weapon. That's why this is actually a downside. So, any case, this spell is a little wonky. William Brandon says, did you know there's a bunch of rules and stuff for when monsters get disarmed? Like how to change the math and everything to make an attack? So notably, you can't release something on someone else's turn, so they have to wait to release the item until their turn starts. That I don't believe so. Because, well, I mean, maybe that might be true, Kevin, but at the same time, what then would... Okay, so I failed the saving throw, and I take full damage, and then I wait till my turn, and then I release the item, and I improve my saving throw by 1 degree to success, and now I take half damage? No, I don't think it's... I think it is. This spell is giving them the action to do it. I agree that the release action presented in the core rules most definitely says that. But what I'm telling you is that the intention of this spell is that they gain a bonus release the item. I think, is release the item free? Oh my God. Here we go. It is a free action, so there you go. So that's what you're doing. Now, it's debatable about whether or not you can use a free action in response to someone else's action, but we'll skip that. It is free, just limited to your turn. Ah. There you go. Well, no longer, because when something's hot, you'll drop it, which makes sense. How is this even a game? Listen, you all know that I enjoy playing this game, but what I don't enjoy is silly, wonky, badly written mechanics. All right, so all in all, how do we feel about heat metal? I need some suggestions in the chat here. It's obviously not a wand. It's obviously not a scroll. Remember, it does 46 damage and 2d4 persistent fire damage, which baseline is pretty good. It's only one creature, though, so keep in mind that like Cone of Cold, or sorry, Burning Hands would be doing 46 damage as well at level 2, and it would be doing it to a cone. And it's only 30-foot range. So we're talking short range, okay damage, on par, but again, not AoE. The persistent damage is really legit, but this only works against a creature that has this metal thing that you can mess with, right? I see a lot of C's, and I'm feeling a C as well. In fact, I accidentally put it into a C to begin with, but C is kind of where I was going to. I will 100% agree that a situation where someone is like wearing metal armor or they have a metal sword they're not going to be dropping, if you cast this on them and they fail the save and they take 46 fire and 2d6 persistent fire damage, that is going to do work. Ooh, Rope Mimic being a little Derek-y in here. Anytime the target chooses the effect, its rank goes down D. Rope Mimic, I will say this. I think it's like a C-. I don't know that it goes straight to D, because a D is a spell that I would be like kind of embarrassed to cast. If this spell got cast on the target, they took 4d6 and then 2d4 persistent, and it hit them 2 more times, like, you'd be really happy with this spell's performance. I should also note, we didn't really talk about this. It heightens pretty well too. It's a +1 heighten for 2d6, and the persistent goes up by d4. So that's actually pretty reasonable as well. So I actually don't mind this spell at C. And Dead Meat is saying that they would put Blur at B. Dead Meat, why don't you let us know why you think that? We did cover that last time. I think that Blur granting concealment is useful, but not game breaking, and the fact that you can't hide in it makes it not as useful. Okay, I'll agree with that, Quagmire. That you think without the choice effect, it could possibly be a low B, so dropping it down to C. Yeah, a lot of the spells could be a lot more interesting. I know that if I were to design Pathfinder spells, I would want to make spellcasters have more interesting choices with their spells. Things like, we talked about this in the very first stream. Spells like Magic Missile and Horizon Thunder Sphere are really, really, really cool. Hey!
God Mercer tipped $10. Sir, it's Thursday night. I know you may not be aware, but it is Thursday night. You stole my entire audience. Please, can I have some of them back at 10? Hair gel is not cheap. Please, it's Thursday night.
I'm sorry, Matt. It is Thursday night. I started singing that like Aladdin. It's Thursday night, like Thursday days. A player off their guard could fall and fall hard out there in the Teldori, or wherever the hell Critical Role is set. All right, anyways, moving on. All right, we've got the bagged cereal version. We got the bagged cereal version of Tasha's Hideous Laughter. It's just got the serial numbers filed off because of intellectual property laws. You gotta love it. And that is, of course, Hideous Laughter. All right. Well, this spell is pretty good. It is emotional. It is mental. So it has all of the drawbacks that it being an emotion and mental spell have. But it's 2 actions, 30 feet, with a duration of sustained. So you are giving up an action. But the most important thing to note about this is it does not have that incapacitation tag. So this is already telling you that you're going to be using up an action each turn to keep this spell powered. So this spell is not something that you want to be using when you're outnumbered. It's not something that you want to be using when you're fighting a horde of monsters. This is a great spell against creatures that are your level or +1 level or +2 level. Obviously, I would say this spell goes all the way up to +3 level, meaning against the boss, because even if the creature passes the save, they can't use reactions. And quite frankly, that alone, like if you're in a 4v1 situation against a party level +3 boss, it might have some really good reactions. And so if it passes a save and then you're able to lock it out of its reactions for the rest of the fight by just sustaining, I think that's pretty good. And if the creature does fail, wow, that is a brutal effect. You're getting basically slow at that point, spell level earlier, and they can't use reactions. I mean, slowed 1 and can't use reactions is essentially stun 1, more or less. And you can just keep it going. This spell has a and as Andy said it best, this spell, if it hits and it lands, and it will because it's incapacitation. I'm not saying it's going to land 50% of the time when you're casting against a higher level topic, but when it does land, you're going to be like, oh, this is really, really strong. And then if they pass, you're still going to be pretty happy with it. And if you get to the point where you no longer need to sustain it, like you just don't sustain it anymore. You're not locked into having to spend that action forever. So this is really, really strong. Damien says any enchantment without incapacitation is at least a B. Hideous Laughter was used on one of my BBEGs. I was hating life as I just saw my evil brawler just laughing. They do not, Quagmire, they do not get a save each turn. Nope, they do not. That is correct, Anthony. They do not get to break out of it. So, and this spell, by the way, should tell you something about this hobby of ours, okay? Like, when you think about your favorite epic dramatic movie, your fantasy heroic films, or you're like, now imagine that the final fight, that the villain that they're fighting is slipping around on a sheet of grease and laughing hysterically while engaged in a fight to the death with the players. Okay, like this game should not be taken seriously. Okay, it just shouldn't be. This spell is ridiculous. Okay, it's ridiculous in the sense that it's funny and it's silly, but it's also very, very powerful at what it does. It does have the limitations of emotion and mental, but those honestly aren't as bad. I'm tempted to go S tier on this. I think this is a really good spell. No incapacitation is very, very powerful. And we're going to get to slow, level 3 slow later, obviously, next level. But newsflash, that's S tier. So anything it's so high in S tier that something that's basically slow light is I think S tier as well. I really do think it's S tier. So it shouldn't be taken seriously. Now bring in the sprites and poppets. No. Yeah, without the repeated saves, it's an S. Total emphasis undervalued the spell, A+. Okay, so CM East is coming back with the comment about the A over S because it's an emotional mental effect. Too many creatures aren't affected by it. Yeah, but like, honestly, like, I would say that most of your big, bad, evil guys that you're going to be using this on are probably going to be affected by it. Most creatures that, kind of fall into that villainous role are going to be scheming, living type creatures that are going to have the mental emotion. You're completely correct that it is, there's a point and I might even say that that's enough to make it an S minus, CM East, but I still think this spell is a very, very solid crowd control spell and will do really good work, especially against like that PL +1, PL +2 monster. If you come across that low will save, classic low will save, big brutish type boss monster, and you just slap this on him, they're going to be slowed 1 basically for the rest of the fight. So that's pretty good. Yeah, only 1 save, no incap, trading 1 action for the enemy's action and their reaction. So in some cases, if the enemy had a good reaction, let's just say attack of opportunity, you're trading 1 for 2, and this is an enemy that you already outnumber. That's crazy, right? Steven, slow and hideous laughter are super powerful. Paizo is so weird about how they curve power. As I said before, it's all about emotion and feelings. Yeah, they missed the boat on slow. Maybe they missed the boat on this one too. Honestly, it's very potent. I mean, right? We can all agree. We're mostly GMs here. If you had your big bad evil guy, okay. I'm not, because whatever. I live and die by the dice. But you have your cool big bad evil guy, and the fight starts, and they cast Hideous Laughter on it and it fails its save and they're going to sustain it the whole fight, you're going to be pissed. You're going to be like, okay, well, I guess, before I was going to like move and use my cool 2-action, like really massive power attack or a super cool attack thing, but now I can't do that. So I guess I'm just going to move and strike. And oh, this creature had this awesome reaction where he could like, when an attack was coming in, he could like teleport and then the attack would miss and then he would make a strike. Well, you don't get to do that anymore either. So it's just, you're done. You're actually, you don't have an attack, you don't have a reaction, and you only get an attack and a move. Basically, this spell converts your character into like a 3rd edition character. But it's also ridiculous, right? The key thing to note here is it's like, you're not mind locking them. Their mind isn't being like, no, you're making them laugh maniacally. It's like the most outrageous thing to imagine, that is this massive dragon, this ancient general, this immortal, and they're all just laughing hysterically. All right, Dead Meat coming in with the Blur description. Blur is the only protective spell that lasts 1 minute. Should put it at B just for that. Mirror Image protects in the short term, but since misses destroy images, it only lasts 2 rounds at max. Possibly. I mean, fights don't really need to be... Spells don't need to be that long for them to be able to really work. I think lasting 1 minute isn't as big deal if you want, and there are protective spells that last longer than 1 minute. Maybe not at level 2. I will consider it as we move through the rest of the level and we look at some of the other spells, Dead Meat, but for right now, I'm going to leave it at C. All right. Yeah, Kevin. Well, I guess Trample is a classic one, right? It's a 3-action activity. Well, I guess I'll just ignore this Trample for the rest of the fight. Cool story, bro. That's when you villain point and you bring in some mooks to the fight. Sure, and this is the problem, right? Like, you signed up to play this game. Like, ignore my AP for a minute. Like why, if you're gonna like play in a game that has spells like this and has mechanics like this, and then you're just gonna be like upset that they use those spells and abilities to do the thing that the players wanted them to do, and you're just gonna like ignore that or cheat, or you're gonna just like rob the players of their victory, then what are you playing this game for? What are you playing any D20 based game for? And then if you use the logic, well, my players would be disappointed. Well, they're the ones casting the spell. What do you want from them? Like, they wanted to cast the spell so that it would fail? I don't know. It's like a weird situation. Like, part of the problem is you just have to accept that like fights aren't going to be this cool, epic, drag out, awesome thing that you want them to be in this game. They're going to be, the boss is going to be grappled by a celestial alligator while laughing hysterically and bleeding from his eyes, nose, and mouth. It's just, whatever. Yeah, Kevin, I know 5e deals with this with legendary resistance, but that's a horrible mechanic too. It's a horrible mechanic too. Matt Colville has talked about it and why it's a bad mechanic. Dead Meat not letting Blur off the hook. It levels well. You can be 10th level and Blur is just as effective, if not more so, with the higher damage being tossed around. I do agree with that to a certain extent. I will say that as you get higher level, creatures don't always necessarily rely on visual acuity, so the Blur can drop off in that respect. Legendary resistance is like incap, but like the GM gets to decide when to use it, and it just automatically works, and they can use it on anything. And then it's like you're stuck in this weird situation. You're like, because if I want this, if I want the creature to actually fail one of these spells, I have to just basically do nothing for many, many rounds. And then finally we get to the point where this becomes interesting. But then if the monster then just suddenly dies because of a save or die spell after 3 saves that it used legendary resistance for, then the creature's just dead anyways. You're like, so it just still just died randomly to a spell. So what was the point of giving it legendary resistance in the first place? All right. Moving on. We have too much to discuss here, you and I. That's the problem. And there's a lot of elements. See, people do not respect the complexity of this hobby. They it seems like there are so many small elements that actually make such a big deal to how play patterns express themselves at your table or your VTT, and how little mechanical things really do influence the way people play and the way that people respond and the way that people enjoy themselves. Like, there's a science to this. There's a good chunk of art to it too, but there's a science to this. Let's see. I never ran a monster with legendary resistance, but I homebrew a boss monster by just giving it more interesting mechanics. Yeah, I saw a good house rule for legendaries. If you use legendary resistance, you spend hit points like 10 to 20%. So at least you made progress. I did something similar to that, Will, in 4th edition, where if a creature got hit by an effect that a save couldn't get rid of, sometimes I would let the creature just take a bunch of damage and then shake off the effect. And so again, it was still giving the creature a choice. So yes, it was making those things less powerful, but at the same time, like, it was so much damage that the player still felt really good, because they're like, wow, like, that did more damage than any of my damage spells ever could. And so I don't feel bad that the GM just sort of shook off my paralyzation because the creature just got hit for 200 hit points. I like legendary actions. Legendary resistance can die in a pit with concentration spells and advantage and disadvantage. And Brutus, gain a hero point. That is 100% correct. Advantage and disadvantage is actually a brilliant mechanic. They just over relied on it, and I think it's great. So they just over relied on it, and in a game where it doesn't stack, it just kind of it gets a little boring after a while. All right, so our next spell is Humanoid Form, which is basically the old alter shape. So this is the transmutation version of the level 1 disguise self. And basically, instead of and this is an important spell, and we are going to talk about this one here for at least 5 to 10 minutes. Okay, couple things. Number 1, this is a polymorph spell, and just like the alter self spell from Pathfinder 1, it actually physically transforms your appearance to that of a small or medium creature, such as a dwarf, elf, goblin, etc., etc. You gain the humanoid traits in addition to your other traits, as well as any related to that creature's kind, such as the goblin trait. And if it does change your size, then your reach can change accordingly. It doesn't really change your statistics in any way. You don't gain any special abilities, so it's cosmetic. It's not an illusion, but it's cosmetic. Here's the problem with this spell. And I should note that also, by the way, that you can heighten it to dark vision or low light vision. So you kind of start to gain some of the supernatural abilities. Okay, number 1 is the duration entirely. CM East is on a roll. The duration defeats the point of it. So there's that. And there's no way to heighten the duration. So the duration kind of defeats the whole purpose of this spell. Okay? Here's the real problem with this spell. This is the problem with this spell. It's that the duration alone makes it a bad spell. Here's the problem with this spell. It grants you a +4 status bonus. Now, a lot of spells in Pathfinder do this exact same thing. So this is important. This is an important topic of conversation. This spell gives you... So again, I'm a wizard, and I am casting Humanoid Form to transform my body. Not an illusion. Transmutation. Polymorph. I am becoming a goblin. Okay? This gives me a +4 status bonus to deception checks to pass as a generic member of a given ancestry. And you add your level even if you're untrained. So again, a lot of spells use this exact same mechanic where it essentially gives you a +4 bonus, which is basically expertise, except it says a status, and you get to add your level. So it's like you're suddenly an expert in deception. Here's the problem I have. A level 3 rogue who is an expert in deception and has a reasonably high... Now remember, it says to pass as a generic member of the ancestry. So what are we comparing this? We're not talking about request. We're not talking about make an impression. We're not talking about lie. Okay, we're talking about the use of deception as a disguise, right? That's what we're talking about here. Okay, we're not talking about creative diversion. Okay, we're talking about this. We're not talking about lie. We're not even talking about opening our mouths. Okay, we are talking about this. Impersonate. Okay, impersonate. There is no world in which a level 3 rogue with a good charisma and a disguise kit. Now, I believe that, that you could totally, you're a rogue and I'm trained in deception, and boy, I'm going to make a really good convincing costume that I'm a goblin or something like that, or that I'm an orc. This spell is literally transforming me into an orc. And you're telling me that I get a +4 bonus and my level to my check? It's the same as the rogue? Now, they did this in Pathfinder 2 because they were sick and tired in 3rd edition and in Pathfinder 1 of rogues and other skill monkeys being really, really good at something, and then a wizard casts a spell because the wizard's like, hey, rogue's like, I'm really good at hiding and I'm invisible. And then the wizard casts invisibility. And guess what? I don't care how good you are at invisibility or hiding. Invisible people are just invisible. Okay? And the same thing is this spell. It's like, no, there shouldn't even be a check. I just am an orc now. Unless they can detect magical transmuted people, that's it. There's nothing here. There's nothing here. I see. So this is them trying to not make this spell strictly better than a rogue spec in disguise, just like the change to knock. Exactly, Kevin. I said they use this spell a lot. We're going to see this again and again and again. Knock is the other perfect example of this. I get it. And, like someone said, Paizo has a hate for spellcasters. It's not that they hate spellcasters. It's that in a world where, it's like in our real world, right? Magic in our world is technology. Okay. Well, guess what? You're the best Olympic sprinter of all time. You're the best skier of all time. You don't go as fast as a snowmobile. Oh, I have the, I have the world record marathon. Eliud Kipchoge ran a marathon in less than 2 hours. Okay. That's insane. Okay. But guess what? A marathon's 26 miles. Okay. That's 13 miles an hour for 2 hours. A moped can do that. Okay. Let alone your car. All right. Technology just is better. Okay. Magic, the ability to, reshape reality. Well, like in this case, it's like, this isn't magical disguise spell. This is, I am becoming an orc physically. My body chemistry, my fate, I am polymorphing into an orc. There is no world where this should be on the same tier as a rogue with a freaking makeup kit. Paizo says spells can't replace skills. Screw your verisimilitude while playing. And that is exactly what they have said. And here's the thing. If Pathfinder 2 was very strictly, clearly a very gamist-driven game, just like 4th edition, where they said it doesn't have to make sense, it's only about being a balanced and fun game, then I'd be on board with that. But they're not. They're trying to be this weird in-between where they're like, no. We're not just a game. Like, our game world is still rooted in this sort of quasi-reality. This sort of verisimilitude is still important. And it's not. Spells like this are just are the reason for that. All right. Yeah, so Quagmire, I mean, like there is certainly something to be said about the nature of what that means, because it says if someone acts suspicious and someone's trying to decide if you really are their ancestry, right? But we can all agree that, like, if I try to, like, sneak into, like, a encampment past guards and they looked at me and I'm an orc, like, versus, like, I'm actually an orc versus someone applied makeup on them, like, it shouldn't even be in the same ballpark. I'm not saying that there aren't other things, like if the orcs start talking to you and you don't speak orcish, like, there could be problems. But regardless, they're going to look at you and go, this person is an orc. Total entropy, that's a whole other conversation about, do I think they should have tried to balance around frequency rather than potency of magic? The problem is that in the past, magical spells were very powerful because they were balanced against the frequency of magic, because the idea was a fighter can swing their sword all day forever. A rogue can sneak attack forever. But wizards and clerics and druids only have so many spells per day, and that at a certain point during the course of your adventuring day, eventually those powerful spells will have dried up, and the wizard will be left with just a crossbow. Or nowadays we would give them infinite cantrips, but back in the day they basically became useless, and that was the trade-off. The problem was every group basically decided two things. Either one, well, that wasn't very fun for the wizard. Sure, you got to kick ass in 2 fights or 3 fights, but then for the rest of the session, you did nothing, and we don't want that. But more often than not, after the casters cast all their powerful spells, you just found a way or an excuse to go rest. And so the balancing mechanic never came into play, because when the spellcasters ran out of spell slots, you just went home. It didn't matter that the fighter and the rogue still had max hit points and that they still had all their weapons and they could sneak attack and fight for all day. Yeah, the wizard's out of fireballs and glitter dust, and the cleric is out of cure serious wounds and whatever, prayers and blesses. We're just going to go home. We're going to rest. And then it created this weird tension in the game, because you're like, well, okay, well, you can't rest because the princess is going to be sacrificed, or the prince needs to be saved. And you're like, okay, I guess we could push on, but we don't have any spells anymore, so I'm kind of just going to do nothing for the rest of the session. That's pretty boring. I'm pretty sure rule number 1 says you're supposed to make sure I'm having fun. And it created this really wonky, bad feel play test in everybody's mechanics. And because they got rid of some of those mechanics that punished going back to town and resting, right? Like random encounters or the nature of dungeons. This is why you didn't hear about 15-minute adventuring days in earlier editions of the game. But when you came to 3rd edition, and Pathfinder 1 by extension, suddenly the 15-minute adventuring day became a real problem, because all of the things that balanced and pushed against a party going in, novaing, using up all their resources, and then going back to town and resting, they removed those balancing forces. It's like when you kill all the wolves and then you're surprised when the deer are suddenly multiplying out of control and eating everything, right? They took out the balance. They took out the checks and balances, and the whole system became just completely flawed. Ryan says, would the spell be better because it'll stack with your training? Yes, although again, I'm curious. Like, again, you're trying to pass yourself off as a generic member of the race. I guess yes, it would. If you were a sorcerer who casts a spell, it would be better for you. Maybe the rogue with the disguise kit is just that good that it rivals magic. I don't know. I don't buy it. That's the problem. And go, oh, you can believe in it. No, but this is a world where magic exists. So if the rogue had a magic disguise kit, if they were using Nolzur's magical pigments to apply their makeup, okay, then I can buy it. But otherwise, no, I can't. All right. So I don't like this spell for all of those reasons, but ignore everything I just said. Its duration is 10 minutes. And in this situation, I think this spell fundamentally fails at what it is trying to accomplish, which is for you to infiltrate an army, right? D. It does what it does. It turns you into an orc or turns you into an elf, but it lasts so long that the limitation on the use on it is very, very limited. All right. And would you ever need to cast this spontaneously out of the blue? Probably not, right? So it's probably a scroll. I should also, by the way, point out that Alter Self, which is this Pathfinder spells Pathfinder 1. Golarian says D for PC, B for a non-humanoid bad guy. Okay, I mean, yeah, sure. It could be kind of a fun GM spell, but I don't really, I don't think it's gonna come up that much, especially with the 10-minute duration. It's just not good enough. Huh. All right, I'm gonna guess that I can put Ignite Fireworks into F tier immediately. Can we agree? Watch it be like the best spell in the game. It's pretty good. It's 2d8 and it's spread across 2 damage types. Burst, 10-foot burst, and they have to make a reflex save. It's 60-foot range, not 10 foot. And they basically get a save, but they can become dazzled or for 3 rounds or for 1 round, even if they save. And you heighten. It doesn't heighten +1. It only heightens +2. So the heighten on this is pretty bad. And if they critically fail, they catch on fire. But again, that's not probably that extent. Well, this spell isn't actually as bad as I thought it was. 2d8 damage is nothing to write home about. Let's be very clear about that. But it is 2 different types of damage. It's fire and sonic. It is a 60-foot range, 10-foot burst. It's damage plus dazzling. So it's kind of a damage and a debuff. I have to respect that. I think without the dazzled, it would be a D. And I think with the dazzled, it's a low C. Like a C-. That would be my take on it, I think. Yeah, Sonic is pretty good. Yeah, this would be a lot better CM East if it did heighten every level. It's not too bad. It will drop off. So, again, this is, remember, Sonic is rather rare. Yeah, so there may be situations. Again, it's not really super... You're not, like, no one's going to be like, oh, ignite fireworks. I mean, they might laugh at you because you're casting ignite fireworks. But, listen, any spell that essentially is saying, I want to be the wizard or sorcerer equivalent of Jubilee from the X-Men, you're probably not doing it 100% right. So, Dead Meat, I think you're too soft on these spells, Dead Meat. Your name implies that you're a tough cookie, but you're being awfully defensive of these spells here. All right, so we're gonna go with C. I think we have a solid consensus that C is where we need to be. How dare you? Jubilee is great. Come on. Jubilee was never great. We're not going to get into that. All right. No one likes it when we're live. They're too busy chatting, or they're too busy donating, or they're too busy tipping. By the way, this is, of course, my chance and my opportunity. If you're enjoying this, if you're watching this on a replay, or if you're in here and you love these conversations, please feel free to check out the description for a link to our Discord. We'd love to see you in there. In order to join our Discord, you have to be a member of our Patreon. We have a couple different tiers that'll get you into our Discord. We do require that you be a member of our Patreon to be a part of our Discord. We find that actually helps keep our group focused. It's really done a really good job at eliminating a lot of trolls and bots and spam. And so it's pretty awesome in that regard. But the people in there are insane. I think we did a count just even a couple months ago that we had like 500 years worth of GM experience in the Discord. So if you're an experienced and seasoned GM and you want to get involved in some really deep conversations with fellow GMs, or if you're new to the game and you're looking to sort of really expand your knowledge and pick up some great tips and tricks, consider joining. We also have a bunch of community games. I think we currently have 6 or 7 scheduled players. We have a fully functional Forge server running Foundry, multiple licenses so people can run multiple games at once. We're running games all the time for the community, and it's a lot of fun. Okay. And of course, Damien doing the Lord's work and really hawking the Patreon. Damien's always a good friend. Quagmire, I agree. I think it earned its place at C. I think having something that does a little bit of both is not a bad thing. Yes, Bill the Great and Terrible, you do. You really do. All right, illusory creature. So it's an illusion spell. And we've talked about these before, but Basically, what it comes down to is your GM cool or are they a party pooper? Because if your GM is cool, spells like this can be a lot of fun. It's a 500-foot range, 2 actions, and its duration sustained. You can make an illusionary image of a creature, large or smaller. It generates sounds, smells, and feels believable to the touch. And then there's a ton of actions, ton of stats about trying to use it in combat, because that's what everybody thinks of, right? Everybody turns these fucking games into Diablo 3, and I can't stand it because God forbid that you solve a problem in a non-linear fashion. Okay, anyways. Like, this spell doesn't need to have all this combat stats. It does, but it really didn't need to do that. But, okay. In combat, it basically functions as a minion. It uses your spell attack roll for attack rolls. Its saving throws and your DC for its AC. Its saving throws are also based off your DC. It can flank. If the image is hit by an attack or fails a save, the spell immediately ends. They can even cause damage by making them believe they are real. They take some mental damage. And potentially, if the damage is very incongruent with what the creature is that's attacking you, they might get an immediate perception check to disbelieve the spell. Any creature that touches the image or uses a seek action, again, using up actions, then gets an attempt to disbelieve your form, your illusion. And if a creature, when a creature disbelieves the illusion, it recovers from half the damage from it and doesn't take any further damage. That part is annoying because you're like, I believed I took the damage. Now I know it's real. Only half of it comes back. You would think all of it would come back. But also what's annoying is like, was I tracking the creature's damage that it was dealing anyways independently already? Like, this part's pretty fiddly. Like, it's a cool concept. It's just fiddly, right? Because you have to, like, am I now as a GM tracking, or the player tracking all the damage that this creature takes? And Flameloud pretty much get it. I don't quite get that. Paizo made the rules for illusions so GMs just wouldn't say no to it like in 5th edition. You are correct. In my games, both as a DM as well as a player in the DMs that I play with, we have always embraced the creativity and fun and the power of illusion. Way too much text on this. I really appreciate that spell is useful in combat. So the gnome illusions doesn't feel like they have. I'm not saying that an illusion spell shouldn't be useful in a combat. I'm just saying I don't think it needed this much mechanical text. But let's take a step back, though, and just kind of appreciate the spell for what it is. You can heighten it, and all it's doing is increasing the damage, and the maximum size goes up by 1. So eventually, with like a level 4 spell, you can make a gargantuan creature. This spell is awesome. This spell is great. This spell is everything that you want an illusion spell to be. Okay? This spell it even says it's believable, it smells right, it makes the right sounds, it even feels believable to the touch. Damien says this spell is cooler and is in concept the more fiddly bullshit Paizo printed about it. Like, forget all the combat nonsense, right? You can even speak through the creature, although you may have to make a deception. And it's 500-foot range, and it's sustained. Like there's so much that you could do that doesn't even matter about combat. Like, let's say there's a tribe of goblins, and they're guarding a mountain pass, and you need them to move. You don't want to fight all of them. Okay, well, summon an illusionary creature of a dragon, and the dragon swoops overhead, and it breathes fire, and it bellows out in a voice, and you say, but it's your voice, but maybe you're making a performance check, or maybe you're a bard, and you're like, be gone, goblins! I claim this area, and then you're at that point you're not playing a video game, you're not reading a novel, you're not watching a movie, you're playing a role-playing game, and people are having to make shit up, and it's weird and it's crazy and the outcomes are uncertain. It's cool that they include a combat text for people who have no soul or imagination, or stuck in some horrible game where you have a GM who's just shitting on this all the time, and the only thing you could do for it is to make a pseudo spiritual weapon that can flank. But outside of this spell does a ton, and again, what's the limitation on this? Your imagination. Large or smaller creature. Eventually huge, and eventually gargantuan. You could just make anything. I think this spell is awesome. I love this spell. I think this is an S tier spell. Gabriel says C. C. Oh, Gabriel, no. Gabriel, this spell is awesome. This spell is magical. This spell is illusion. This spell is going to empower you to have cool, fun ideas and make it reality. We always talk about how we want wizards to feel like they're not just limited to these Damien says it's Green Lantern, the spell. Yes, exactly. Whatever you can think of, you can dream of, you can make this, and you could use it to whatever end you want. And if you know that the goblins are afraid of the ogre, make an illusion of an ogre. You know, make sure it describe it as having goblin skulls around its neck, and just play that out and see how that goes. Like I think, you know, I mean, we have a couple people in the chat saying it's an S. Some people could say it's an A. I could totally see the A here, but I think illusion spells are where a lot of the fun of the, like, I get that, like, fireball is fun, right? But it's you throw fireball, it does damage, and it's over. And Quagmire says it really great here. It's a spell that encourages creativity. It's going to get major bonus points for me. It also encourages non-linear thinking. A fireball is a hammer, and when you only have hammers, everything starts to look like a nail. When everything in your repertoire or your prepared list, I use repertoire not in the Pathfinder 2 sense, but when everything in your arsenal does damage, then suddenly the only option that seems available to you is fighting. And I know that people gave me, shit in some of the earlier versions of this because they said Derek is only valuing damaging spells. It wasn't because of that. It's because the spells that didn't do damage, they had just made so shitty, and they made them so bad. This is an instance where they didn't do that. This is an instance where they really gave you a lot of cool, fun, powerful tools that you can use to really express yourself and come up with really good ideas that'll make for, I'm sure, really fun stories. So, all right, let me see here. Love illusion spell as an illusionist fanboy. Any illusion S tier makes me proud. Total Entropy says it thinks that this lacks the mechanical strength for S tier. I agree with you, Total Entropy. If we were just rating this on 2 action per turn, DC equals AC, strike 1d4 plus mental damage, and 1d4 plus stat in mental damage, yes, I don't even think the spell would be maybe A tier. And the Rope Mimic, there doesn't appear to be the game rules might say that sustain has a limit. I think at a certain point, right, like it becomes an exploration action, and if you start sustaining past like 10 minutes, I think it becomes an exploration action, and I do think there are limitations on that. I'm sure some genius in chat will probably immediately come in with the rule on that, but for the most part, no, you could keep this thing going for a long time. How much more broken is a spell that allows you to think outside the box and solve many problems? And I think tremendously, because now combat isn't the only solution. And now I can create fun, innovative exploits to the game and just really use those to a lot of fun. So that sounds amazing, CM East. And here's the thing. We talked about this before. It's not just about the mechanics. Do these spells create situations that you otherwise could not get without the power of magic? And, I don't care how good the fighter or the rogue is, they're not creating a giant genie that looks like the big blue Aladdin version and, creating a distraction that way. Yeah, you can definitely continue to sustain it as exploration activity. I just think there's a limitation, like you become fatigued or exhausted or something. And then there you go. So, but that's still very, very, very fun. All right, we're going to look it up here. All right. No? Did we miss it? Here we go. Repeat a spell. Typically, this spell is a cantrip that you have to wait for combat to break out, and even then it must be cast 2 actions. In order to prevent fatigue due to repeating casted, you'll likely use this activity only when something out of the ordinary occurs. You can instead use this activity to continue sustaining a spell with a sustained duration. Most such spells or items effects can be sustained for 10 minutes, although some specify they can be sustained for a duration. Either way, this spell is awesome, and it's fun, and I think you're going to enjoy. I think you're going to enjoy playing with it. So, I think that's pretty cool. Oh no, Frank. No. See, Frank, no. This is you got to get that out of your mindset, Frank. Frank, this is a player spell. This is how you are supposed to play the game, Frank. You are supposed to be the ones pushing the agenda. Okay, this is not it's not the GM makes the players believe that there's a big dragon so that he could push his plot and his agenda. No. This is the kind of narrative control player agency spell that I think are critical to tabletop role-playing games. Yeah. Everybody coming out of the woodwork with stories of how they used illusions. In some cases, maybe to even automatically win encounters that they otherwise might have not. No one has story like I threw fireball and it did 40 damage. Oh, dude, one time I threw fireball and it did 42 damage. Like, I get that mechanically that is compelling, but it's not interesting. I don't want to hear your story about how many dice you rolled for your fireball. I want to hear about the cool way you used an illusion spell in order to, hoodwink a group of orcs or a group of goblins. Okay, awesome. Well, I'm glad. That if that's all I accomplished today, then good time. That's pretty bad. Okay, that was good. That one got me. See, look, awesome. That's another good one. See, they're just very. Illusions are where you can really stretch the creative muscle. Brutus, it's because the nature of the humanoid form spell being short duration, and it's the fact that it's tied to deception is innately tied to this idea in my mind, and I could be wrong here, of you trying to do like some sort of infiltration, getting into the orc camp or whatever. And I mean, I guess you could just be in and out and like 5 minutes in, like hop into the tent and leave out. But for the most part, I think that's more of a longer duration spell. A spell like this, I think, so I'm sorry, I got distracted here. So I don't know if is it an hour or is it 10 minutes? Because it says sustaining a spell for more than 10 minutes ends the spell and makes you fatigued, unless the spell lists a different maximum duration, or sustained up to an hour. So that's interesting, right? So it's like, does that mean that I can sustain it for 9 minutes and 56 seconds and then end it, and then I'm not fatigued? But if I try to go that extra 4 seconds, then it ends, and then I am fatigued? It's kind of a weird one. All right. We got time for a couple more. Oh, Flame Loud. No. Listen, being a player is overrated. Being a GM's where it's at. You create worlds. All right, let's try to knock out a couple of these real quick. All right, Impeccable Flow. Sounds horrible. All right, spoilers. Spoilers for Strength of Thousands. So these are usually tend to be pretty bad ones. It's 2 actions for divination. It's 1 minute. You attune yourself to the cosmic order. You gain a +1 status bonus. Oh, this spell actually isn't bad. You gain a +1 status bonus to perception checks, saving throws, and skill checks. If you critically fail any check while under the effects of the spell, the bonus ends. Oh. And you instead get a -1 penalty check. Ugh. It was almost good. And then if you critically fail, it double punishes you, and it's only 1 minute instead of 10 minutes. If this was like a heroism light, if this was like an arcane kind of heroism, where it's like, okay, you don't get the bonus to attack rolls, but you do get the bonus to perception checks, saving throws, and skill checks, because you're kind of in a flow state with the cosmic order, and it lasted for 10 minutes, and then it heightened. This spell's pretty meh. Is it? No, it's probably not. It's 1 minute duration. Oh. And then the fact that they throw on this thing, it's like, look, I already critically failed when I cast a buff spell to try to make it so that, I could do better. And then I'm going to get punished. I guess the only, at that point, you're like, well, the only saving grace is that, well, at least the spell duration is really short and shitty. And that way I don't have any, problems with the penalty. Ugh. It's horrible. It really is. Okay. All right. I'm going F. I think that's our first F of the session. All right. Instant armor. Spell that's cool, but not actually that good. It takes 10 minutes to set up. It's a contingency spell, which was introduced in Secrets of Magic. I do like contingencies, but they typically give you a reaction during someone else's, basically set up a situation where you can cast a reaction. And they typically have a long duration, but you can only have one contingency spell up at a time. So it takes you 10 minutes to set this up at the beginning of the day, and then your armor is whisked away, and then as a one action, manipulate, you can armor up. The spell then ends. Well, oh, I don't think it would ever be a scroll. I'm just trying to think of a situation where it's like, okay, so the situation is I want to be wearing armor, but I don't want to have armor on. But then if something happens where I do need armor, I now want to have to use one action to get it back. Okay. Well, for starters, this is only obviously useful for a person who can cast spells that is wearing heavier armor. So that's already a fairly short list, right? You can't sleep in medium armor. I definitely think it's a wand, because if you're going to want this spell, you're probably going to want this spell every day. But here's the problem. It's like it only works once per day, right? We've established this. So, everybody's saying it's for social stuff. You want to have your armor in case. Here's the reason why that doesn't even work, though. Okay, what if I don't have this spell? What if the fight breaks out and no one's wearing their armor? And so what? Everybody's armor class is 8 points lower than it should be. And so what does that mean? It's an instant TPK in Pathfinder 2nd Edition? Like, do you understand how this is, like, problematic? Like, I'm not saying, like, this is, like, I'm not saying, like, that the world has to be balanced around you, but it's, like, it's a problem the way that the game is structured, because if someone doesn't have the right armor, then you just can't even play the game. And so when someone says, oh, I have instant armor, and it's like, okay, well, the rest of us can't wear it. We don't have instant armor. So if a fight breaks out, I think we're all just dead, because our armor classes, they're going to be critting us on 2s or 3s or something insane. Yeah. So yeah, the sleeping one is okay. I'll buy that, right? Like, if you get ambushed and you're sleeping and no one, again, but it's like, okay, so you're a group of level 9 characters and you're sleeping, and the GM ambushes you with several level 7 trolls, and no one's wearing their armor. I think it takes like 5 minutes to put on your armor. And then if someone doesn't have, if everybody in the party doesn't have instant armor up, they're wiped. They're killed. I guess that's how that happens. So Brutus is suggesting that you should, the fight is balances against you not wearing armor. I'm not 100% sold on this spell. You all seem to have, like, a lot of options, and I'll put it into the C wand. I could see again, you already have to be a caster who's wearing medium or heavy armor, so basically a, you know.
Hair God Mercer tipped $10. You know you don't need rules if you fudge all the time, just saying.
Right. That is true. The game would be a lot easier if you did that. So I think a C is fair. I think for certain unique edge cases, it's going to be possibly useful. I don't think it's a D. I mean, it does, you know, maybe it is a D. I don't know. It could be a D, right? Because, like, okay, we're seeing some Ds in the chat. Because it's like, okay, it's not an F. It clearly does what it's intended to do, but it's like, I could see that most wizards would never take this. And if you're that wizard who needs full plate and they're going, like, okay, it's like, well, I'm a wizard, but I wear full plate and I'm going into a ball and I want to be able to get my armor up at an instant bonus. That's a lot of ifs in that statement, you know? All right, I'm going to take Kevin on this one. He says, I've been arguing in favor for it, but I think it's a D. And I'll buy that. All right, I'm good with that. All right, we got a few more minutes left, and we have a couple more eyes. So, just two. All right, we get a big one. We get a big one. Invisibility. They did a good job with invisibility in this version of the game. It's range touch, one creature, so, you know, you could cast it on other people other than yourself. The duration is 10 minutes, which is sweet. It's enough to actually be useful in an exploration sense. I mean, obviously, you'd like it to be hours, of course, but I mean, invisibility for hours would be pretty broken. But, like, if it was 1 minute, I don't think you could, like, do what you want to do, right? Like, sneak into the office while there are people there and steal the documents and get out. 10 minutes is enough time for you to do that. The other thing is, you become invisible. It makes you undetected to all creatures. They could still try to find you, but, you know, for the most part, it is pretty good strong. But at level 4, when you heighten it, it becomes busted. I should also note, as CM East is sort of really saying, a lot of the spells that quote-unquote counter invisibility, like even C invisibility, don't do that anymore. Usually they just make you concealed. Now, everybody's aggressively agreeing that greater invisibility or heightened fourth invisibility is very, very strong, and I agree with that. But I think even the base level of it is pretty powerful because it only ends if you use a hostile action. There are plenty of ways that a caster could, especially someone who is occult or arcane, could cast a bunch of spells for an entire fight and not actually take a hostile action. And so to that end, I mean, this is a fantastic defensive buff, and I think invisibility is an S tier. I think it's useful in combat. We can all agree to that, but it's also useful in exploration. And then greater invisibility actually is less useful in exploration because it actually reduces the duration, but is a bomb powerhouse inside of combat, right? So I think it's, you know, easily S tier. You instantly become undetected. That's a great point to total entry. It does make you undetected. It's like you get a free automatic sneak action that you succeeded at against all creatures automatically. So in a sense, just casting this spell is almost giving you actions and you're automatically passing them. So that's really, really good. That's pretty cool, Galarian. I need to mess around with the trick magic item feat a little bit more. So invisibility, I think, is pretty busted. It's pretty powerful. I mean, I think it's good on anybody. It enables sneak attacking. It gives you a 50%, essentially 50% defensive bonus on top of your armor class bonus. It basically makes everybody flat-footed to you. It is tremendously powerful. It's very, very good. So, very easy S. All right, we got one last I spell, and then we're gonna close it up. Iron Gut. Well, it's from Gods and Magic, which has not been our favorite when it comes to these spells, but you know, we'll take a look at it. It's 1 hour duration, 2 actions to cast, Arcane and Primal. Your mouth. Okay. Your mouth, esophagus, and stomach become incredibly elastic and tougher than metal. You can reach down your throat To store an object of light or negligible bulk as if it was your backpack. F. All right. We're done with that spell. I don't even. We're done with that spell. Okay. So yeah. So we had some really good spells here, didn't we? We picked up Hideous Laughter S tier, Illusory Creature S tier, and Invisibility S tier. So that's 2 illusions and 1 enchantment. So that's very, very Enchanter EQ happy, which makes me very happy because I liked Enchanter spells. And so it's like, oh, Derek, you're being biased. Well, no, I just think that all of those spells, Hideous Laughter, I think is very, very potent as a combat spell. Illusory Creature, I think, is very, very, very powerful in an exploration mode, in a creative problem-solving way, and I think it has some applicability inside of combat as well. They took that extra step to try to do that. And Invisibility, it has a really firm foot in both categories. Invisibility is actually a spell where you might actually want to have a 4th level version of it and a 2nd level version of it, because you're like, I want maybe the 10-minute long duration one to do some more exploration activity shenanigans, like send the rogues sneaking into an otherwise open, empty room where they wouldn't have cover or concealment, but now they're invisible. But they want the 4th level one for the,
Stephen tipped $5. Creativity, player agency, and shared narrative.
Yes.
Illusion spells of the stream.
Yes, exactly. Very, very good stuff. And you might want the 4th level invisibility because you want that super powerhouse short duration buff, and then you might want the 10-minute 2nd level spell for the added benefits of the exploration activity. So yeah, I think that those were pretty cool spells, and of course we got off on some tracks about some different things, but I want to say thanks to everybody who stuck with us, everybody who joined us, who stuck around for this. This whole thing has been crazy, everybody. I mean, I've been playing these games for so long, and to meet so many amazing, incredible folks, and the thing I really respect about it is most people don't agree with me, and that's okay, because I'm learning from you, you're learning from me, and we're all trying to make our games better. One size does not fit all. One game system does not fit all. And if I'm guilty of one thing, I'm guilty of many things, but if I'm guilty of one thing, it's that I think I have focused a lot on Pathfinder 2nd Edition. It's the game that we're playing. It's the game that we advertise. It's the game that we use, Rise of the Rune Lords for. But that is not my, that's not my intention either. I mean, tomorrow I'm running my Legend of the Five Rings game, the version from Fantasy Flight Games. I love that game system. It's probably my favorite game system that I'm running right now, maybe even more than Pathfinder 2nd Edition. So one thing that I might want to look into and explore a little bit is, some additional streams, not substitution, but maybe some additional streams where I can really talk to you all about different types of role-playing games, because I've had a lot of people reach out to me and say, Derek, I've only ever played 5th Edition, or I've only ever played Pathfinder. I've heard of Call of Cthulhu, and that's it. There's just this world of games out there, and I think there's a lot that the way I GM in Pathfinder, I think is a product of these influences from some of these other games, which change and shape the way that I play Pathfinder. And I think sometimes when people play Pathfinder and they might be, super, fudging things all the time, I think it might be because they might really want to be playing a different game, and they're like, they don't know about it. So, there's only one TTG phase, and his name is 5th Edition. I mean, that's true. I mean, again, I know that some people are going to dip out here, but although who are we getting? Critical Role, like the first 25 minutes of it are ad reads nowadays. Anyways, if there's one thing I love when people do, it's pointing people towards more RPGs. Absolutely. And again, I love all these RPGs. I love that I'm playing a bunch of different games. Pathfinder 2 scratches one type of itch really, really well. It doesn't scratch all of my itches. So, there's other places to do. Well, the 5e community is an interesting community because it's it's a community that's had to be self-taught, it had to be self-reliant. It grew so quickly, it grew so fast that so many 5e players are just not surrounded in sort of ecosystem. I'm very lucky. I have a friend group that has always been very open-minded to games. We all grew up together. We all went to Gen Con. We were exposed to hundreds of different new games each and every week, each and every year. And now I'm part of a Discord community where they're, part of our Patreon, where people are playing Call of Cthulhu. I played in Star Trek Adventures, the 2D20 game from Mophidius. I just made a new lieutenant, and I'm going to be playing in a Star Trek Adventures game that one of the patrons is running. People are talking about doing Torchbearer and Burning Wheel. Okay, my love and passion for Torchbearer and Burning Wheel, along with that of Ben and William Brandis, we've gotten like 5 or 6 or 7 patrons to buy Burning Wheel. Do you know, that's crazy? That's like the most books that Burning Wheel has probably sold in a week ever. Yeah, Burning Wheel. Nobody plays Burning Wheel. But you play these games and you learn from them. And yes, Damien is running it. William Brandis makes a really good point here is, 5e is mainstream, and, like WoW made MMOs and MUDs had been around forever, but WoW made it, acceptable to be an MMO player. And you had moms playing massively multiplayer online games. You had the guys that would normally hang out at the bar, suddenly they were hanging out at an Iron Forge. So there's always a game that's going to try to break through some of these barriers, and people become very connected to that game. And it can be very off-putting. And, people invest money, and you don't want to switch. And it took you maybe longer time than others to get up to speed because you were brand new to role-playing games. And the last thing you want to do is go back to being a total noob again. So I don't fault the 5e community for sometimes being maybe a little xenophobic. I'd love to see more 5e players playing different types of games. I definitely know that the RPG industry has grown a ton, and they say a rising tide lifts all ships, but it has been, I think, fairly one-sided. But the Avatar, Avatar: The Last Airbender Kickstarter was amazingly successful, and that's a Powered by the Apocalypse game. So I think that gives me a lot of hope about some aspects of this community. And I mean, even then, I'm running a 5e game. It's only monthly, so we only play once a month. But I'm playing with a group who we've been together for a couple years now, playing on and off online and in person during the COVID, as quarantine happened. But we started with 13th Age, and then we played Mutants and Masterminds, and then we played Blades in the Dark. So we've literally never played your sort of, one of the big 2 or big 3. And so for this 4th game, we're like, hey, let's just play, something classic, something that everybody kind of can vibe to. And some of these players are like, I've literally never played Dungeons and Dragons, or certainly not 5th edition. And so I think it's interesting. And, it's funny, Clarence, people were like, oh, we did a video about that. Actually, it was one of our videos. Actually, that statement is why the Knights of Last Call kind of took off. We had only been doing APs, and we had only been getting like a couple hundred views, and we only had like maybe 100 subs. And then Professor Dungeon Master from Dungeoncraft did a video about how Pathfinder 2 might be struggling because they did a Humble Bundle. We thought it was a brilliant marketing move. I mean, their rules are for free already on Archives of Nethys, so what the hell does it matter? If you get $5 for them, great, and get some exposure for it. And he thought that it was a bad sign, and we thought it was a great sign. So we made a video about it, and we picked up we doubled our subs overnight. So that was actually kind of a big moment for us, and kind of how we started gaining some clout. So, okay, so that is the end of this live stream. We are going to be back next Tuesday, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, with our Rise of the Rune Lords game. It's going to be weekly now, live. Yes, live. It was insane last time. For those of you who don't follow our AP, everybody in my party now has 6 hero points, because the chat donated so much money to them. But I also have 8 villain points, which we are working on making even more powerful. So it is going to be, it's going to be a lot of fun. It's going to be a lot of crazy, and yet still fun and balanced. And that's the key. And then we'll probably set up some sort of live stream as well. We're also recording a new episode of our podcast this weekend. We are going to be doing a product review. We're reading through Battle Zoo Bestiary. and we're thinking about how to continue some of our other series like Night School, Combat and Tactics, and the like. You know, those series have never been as popular as we would like them to be. And so we're really trying to figure out a way, like, what's the best way to grow the YouTube audience, to grow our Patreon, to connect with you all, to give you content that you're enjoying, that's going to make you want to subscribe and view. And ideally, I mean, if you really, you know, if you're vibing with what we're, you know, doing, to join our Patreon. You know, and that's not just me because I have a financial stake in it, but because if you're vibing with what we're saying, I want you to be part of that discussion. I want you to be part of that community. So Brutus says, I miss Night School. Bob misses Night School too. He really wants to keep building that dungeon, but man, we did not do, those videos did not do that well. You know, like when we just talk about, like, I mean, I hate to say it, but if I just did like a top 10 feats, top 5 classes, top 5 magical items that your character needs today, I think those videos would do a lot better. But those videos are kind of, I don't know. You know, they don't thrill me. I'm not saying I wouldn't have something to say on the matter, but doing a long form 45-minute discussion as we sort of work through building a campaign with a new GM, and we talk about the mental state, the strategy, you know, that isn't as appealing to a wide audience, and YouTube is all about appealing to a wide audience. So it is kind of a challenge, you know. CM East. That is a really good idea. I kind of really like that. I'm going to add that to our Trello board, like, immediately. That's a really good idea. Yeah, I see a lot of, so CM East. Thank you. If you're not a member of our Patreon, CM East, you should be. You got some good stuff to say. Yeah, I see some people saying Night School, like, again, I mean, I think this was literally something I wanted to do with Bob anyways, like teach him how to GM. And Bob's like, we should totally record it and we should make it into a series. And I think it'll be really successful. It just kind of wasn't. So one thing that we might do just to make it easier is, you know, we might just do a live stream where Bob and I are sort of working together. Chat can kind of participate. They can throw in their 2 cents. They can ask some questions. We can make it a little bit more collaborative, because at the very least, it'll be easier for us to produce, which is always a big thing. You know, Bob has 2 kids and works. I work. I don't have 2 kids, but I have to run this channel. So it does add up. But also, too, you know, if people like what we're doing and we get a couple donations, that already makes us more money than our YouTube videos ever make. So, I can't stress this enough. We make almost nothing off of YouTube. I mean, like, literally, like, almost nothing off of YouTube. We make like a little over $100 a month. It is almost nothing, despite the fact that we get tens of thousands of hours watched like every month. Our money comes from viewers like you. Sound like PBS. Our money comes from our patrons, our loyal, supporting, amazing, magnanimous patrons, and from folks who sometimes are patrons and sometimes aren't, who decide to tip or otherwise support us in these live streams. The tips are really nice because YouTube doesn't take a massive bite out of our ass like they do with the super chats. Super chats, YouTube gets 30%. So if you give us $10, YouTube gets 3, we get 7. But if you use the tip function, I know it's a little bit more of a pain in the butt, but if you use the tip function, we pretty much get all of that minus like a 1% payment processing fee. So yeah, Night School is great for videos. Top 10 videos are meh. Anthony, I agree with you. That's why I haven't done, like, if I wanted this channel to be successful, I would do 5th edition and I would do top 10 videos. And there you go. I'd be done. I mean, I'd be home run. Ben says, don't make Night School live. We'll discuss in Discord. So Ben, I think you're kind of picking up what I'm saying, but, you know, again, there's some discussion about how do we use some of those other video series, which we enjoyed making, Combat and Tactics and Night School. How do we make those more effective and more profitable? Because right now, you know, it takes a ton of work to make those, and we get, you know, $2 to $3 like total, like lifetime from those videos. It's been really rough. So it's just a lot of work. And then I think about, like, oh, I could be doing more live streams. I could be interacting with people on the Discord. I could be running more community games. I could be preparing for our live stream game. And I'm like, I'd rather spend my time doing that. So Top 10 reasons why D&D 5th edition is better for making videos on YouTube than Night School. A lot of people love combat and tactics, and to be fair, you know, that's part of that is us reaching the audience that is really connected with us and who really wants to take a close, deep look at the game. And I cannot deny that. But, you know, I also now have a Patreon of over 100 people. And so I have to think, like, what is the best way to serve that community and at the same time grow the channel by finding new viewers and finding new subs and finding new potential patrons through YouTube. So in a sense, you know, yeah, you'd be taking 20, 100K subs, but not quite sure why. No shade. Yeah, Dungeon Coach, taking 20, Dungeon Dudes, Professor Dungeon Master. All of these people have multiple tens of thousands, approaching 100,000 subs, and we never will. Paizo doesn't even have, like, Paizo has like 20K subs. No Nat, who's the biggest, you know, player in our space, he doesn't even have 20K subs. So, you know, it's a small group, it's a small niche community, and you know, again, maybe we should be doing something different if we want to grow, but that's not our primary objective. We want to build a community that is willing to support us for producing the kind of content that we want to support and that they want to see. And again, I don't want to say that this is a Pathfinder 2 channel, because I would love to talk about other ideas, because I think learning about other games helps you be a better game master overall. Okay, I think that's it. So if you're a member of the Patreon, I'll see you on the Discord. And for those of you who aren't, thank you for joining us. If you tipped, if you supported us, thank you so much. Please remember to leave a like on this video. That does help with the YouTube algorithm, get us out there to see some more people. And we will continue to chip and hammer away at this massive spell list. So thank you very much, and we'll see you next time on Knights of Last Call. Bye, everybody.